So now let's jump into how I incorporate AI into my video editing workflow. So back on the Mac again. Well, first of all, so obviously there's been a whole bunch of AI stuff that's been happening recently, as I'm sure you're aware. I've made a couple videos related to it. But one thing that I recently started doing was using some software called Recut, which basically uses AI to create jump cuts automatically in videos so you don't have to do it yourself. Now, I was a little bit hesitant to use this at first because sometimes I'm a little particular about how I do my jump cuts. I like it to be natural and have some breathing room between all my jump cuts. But there is quite a bit of customization you could use. There's even a free trial that you could use before you decide to purchase it. You could use all the functionality, it just limits how many times you could use it before you have to buy the software. But based on how much I do jump cuts, I would say it's definitely worth it. In fact, pretty much every jump cut in this video, at least 99 or 98% of them, were done using AI and not me. So it saved me a lot of time. I literally spend hours on it. So at first I was a little bit hesitant just because it's like $100 USD dollars, but it's a one-time fee. And I thought about it again a couple months after I initially saw it. And when I consider how much time I spend on jump cuts in the past and how much I will coming up in the future, I'm like, it's actually a no-brainer. Time is money, so I ended up deciding to get it. I tried it out first, but it pretty much does what I want. There's a few gotchas here and there, but depending on your style, there might not be at all. It still saves a ton of time regardless of them. So I thought I'd kind of demonstrate how it works so that hopefully maybe you can start using this too if you generally spend a lot of time doing jump cuts. So on the Mac, I'm going to start out by opening Recuts. My spotlight keeps glitching out sometimes and I always have to keep resetting the index to get it working again. For now I'm going to say no right here. But this is what the actual software looks like. There's a whole bunch of different parameters right here that you can mess with. So if it does things wrong, then you can tweak it until you like it. In this video, I ended up doing 0.0442 for the threshold with the music and everything. And my minimum duration was about 2 seconds of silence. So basically for me, the threshold is basically what's considered silent. So what decibel level is actually considered silent? Sometimes you might have like a humming noise or music in the background like I do. So I might adjust the threshold to basically match that. This is probably something that's going to work the vast majority of the time. And then basically what's actually considered silence to begin with. I say that at least 2.5 seconds or longer is considered silence because sometimes I might be doing something on the terminal, in which case I want people to be able to see what's actually happening while I may not be talking. I consider this personally a natural amount for my videos. And then you can leave some spacing in between each jump cut that it automatically does on the left and right side. Give it some padding. So yeah, if you're hesitant about it, look at these settings before you just close your mind against this. And then there's audio spikes that it can take care of too, and you can basically mess with that. And then there's a whole bunch of other things you can mess with too. Like, do you want it to just create jump cuts and leave the silence in, which could be useful if you're synchronizing audio? Or do you want to have it automatically get rid of the silence like you would when you're actually removing jump cuts? Since I last recorded this, I actually ended up getting DaVinci Resolve Studio. I mainly got it because of the crazy AI features that it has. What I currently find most useful is the vocal isolation, so I can separate a voice from car sounds, which is so useful. You can pinch your finger pretty easily because it kind of goes on a little weird. Then when it slides in, it's a very tight space, and if your finger's trapped in there, ouch. This option is by far the most convenient for me out of pretty much everything else out there, especially given the factors like price, how good it is, and the fact that I can do it offline in DaVinci Resolve Studio. I also love that it can auto-generate captions and even time them automatically. It does a really good job, and I find it particularly useful if I want to remove certain words from audio recordings. I can just search the captions and remove them that way. I can also export the auto-generated subtitles as an SRT, which I was previously going to use a Python script for, but this is way better. I don't need to use tools like Subtitle Edit anymore to time everything, which is a pain by comparison if you ask me. It also has that text-based transcript editing feature that you may have heard of, where you can delete text and it deletes that part of the video. But I have yet to get it working on my system, probably because I keep running out of GPU memory. Maybe it'll work better on my Mac when I try it on there in the future. I also got it because of the magic mask feature, which is in Fusion. It works pretty much just like the rotoscope tool in After Effects, possibly even better than the rotoscope tool did when I used that years ago. I was previously bummed out that it didn't have the rotoscope tool or something like that, but Magic Mask effectively brings that into DaVinci Resolve now. You do need the studio version for pretty much everything I'm mentioning here. There's probably a couple I missed, but those are the main features that I currently use and why I decided to switch to Studio, especially considering this is probably going to be my long-term editor, as it already has for the past 3 years so far. I'm very excited for the potential of AI, especially these types of things right here. Of course, I have mixed feelings about certain things, but these kind of things that I showed, that's what I'm really excited about. So I'll give you an example, then we can see it in action. I'll show you exactly how it works. This works with pretty much all editors. It works with DaVinci Resolve, Final Cut, Adobe Premiere, and there might be some other software that it actually works with, where the XML that it exports will be compatible with those things. Or you can export a video too, worst case, and that'll work too. But again, as I mentioned earlier, there's the generational loss aspect when you export a video. But if you can export the timeline directly, no generational loss from this at all, which is pretty sweet. So let's demonstrate it. So the first thing you do is typically drag a video in here. And even if you're in the middle of a video and you want to try it out midway through, have it create its own timeline. Then you can cut and paste basically where you left off, and you can cut and paste any amount into an existing timeline and keep what you've already done for jump cuts. So if you're trying it out, highly recommend that. So I think I'm going to demonstrate it with this one. So basically this is a video that's about 2 hours long. I don't have this public yet, but I probably will someday. I'm basically making a graphical auto hotkey script right here. There's a lot of silence in this video, so let's say all I wanted to do was cut out the silence and I didn't really care like how good of a job it did or anything like that. I mean, of course I could make adjustments once I bring it into the editor, because this only has to do with the cutting process. Once it's in the editor, it's just like normal. So what I would do is drag this in. It's now rendering all the audio, which will take a little bit for a 2-hour video. And all those red marks you see right there are the jump cuts that it's making following these parameters right here. So as you can see right here, it's made 489 jump cuts. If I were to do this exact same thing and I was happy with what it did, how long would that take me? Sometimes I'm guilty of watching the video as I make jump cuts. So I'm gonna say it would take maybe 2 or 3 hours if I wanted to do a good job with the jump cuts. That's with the jump cuts alone. If I needed to do any post-production work on it, that's not gonna cut. Sorry, I did not mean to make that joke, but you know what I mean. So as you can see, it's originally 2 hours, so it got rid of a good 30 to 40 minutes just in a couple seconds. So now what? Now it's time to export it. So since I'm using DaVinci Resolve, that's what I pick. You do what you're supposed to do. You can keep the silent segments or get rid of them. I will get rid of them. Even where it makes mistakes, that'll work just fine. So now I can just save the XML as what I want. Maybe I'll put timeline at the end so I know what it is. So now it's exported. Basically, you could do what I just did up to 5 times on the free version. So now I'll just come into the edit page, file, import, timeline. And now I just select that XML that I created. So in DaVinci Resolve, I might change this to 0 because I actually got used to the 0:1 format that DaVinci Resolve always does. But I actually just started adjusting back to 0:0 for the first time here. I'm usually happy with these settings because it'll import the footage if it's necessary. Otherwise, it leaves it. I can set any timeline settings right there. And this doesn't even have to be my final timeline. I can cut and paste clips between timelines. That's where you could do it even midway through a project. So if you've actually seen my most recent ChatGPT video where I did an overall analysis, I actually cut about 60% of it, and then I got Recut and decided to let that do the rest. And I just cut and paste the jump cuts as needed. And it did a really good job. I only had to adjust a couple things. So that was pretty sweet. So now I can just hit OK if I'm happy with these settings. And look at that. So I am going to do this tab view, which I typically like to do. Look at all those jump cuts. That might have taken me a few hours. I'm just gonna get rid of that audio track. But yeah, look at that. Why don't we see how they actually turned out? I don't think I have audio set up right now where I can just do that. I might, but I don't know. Regardless. So basically I'm like talking. You can't really see the webcam overlay, sorry about that. So I'm talking right here. Then it creates a jump cut. I think I'm pretty good with most of these settings. Just take my word for it. You'd obviously double check this. Then if you already had a timeline and you only needed this much, let's say, then you can cut and paste into the other timeline and you're set. So this saves literally hours, if not days, because I spend so much of my editing time just making jump cuts. If I can tell it what that constitutes, why not have AI do it for me? AI is going to be a really handy assistant, especially coming up here. So yeah, I mean, this is really exciting stuff here. So that's pretty much how I use Recut. If I needed to synchronize audio, I think I can drag multiple audio clips in Recut. Can't remember for sure. Otherwise, I could just do the main audio and then synchronize everything. Then manually remove the silence once I have everything synchronized, which is kind of a pain, but I'd say it still saves maybe about 50% of the time, if not more. 69 is probably where it's at. Yeah, I think so. That's pretty much it with Recut. If you want to save time with jump cuts, seriously consider checking this out. It's a one-time fee. Right now, there's probably going to be more fees, but these are for optional features that you don't even need to get, most likely. You could use it pretty much wherever. I have it set up on Windows as well with my same license key. So, yeah, you could use it in several different places if you want. So, yeah, definitely check out Recut if you have the option. Now that I use Recut, I completely changed how I do my videos now. So I used to do a rough cut pass, and I would often watch at double or triple speed because I was guilty of watching the video and I wanted to save time. Then I do B-roll. But now I like to just use Recut for my cutting pass, and then I immediately start my editing pass and finish up any cuts that I need to, do any quick edits that I can. Otherwise, I create a marker for later, then I just go through all the markers more or less. Once I'm done with those particular edits, since I've watched the video at normal speed, I consider everything done since I've already basically watched it at this point. That would be nearly impossible to do if I had to do mostly jump cuts. Now Recut makes that very easy and possible, and I love this change in workflow